Hello and welcome to another Purveyor of Light photo quick tip. Today we're going to go back to basics. So many people are getting into photography and so many people are especially switching over from Lightroom to Capture One. I thought it might be a good idea to do a introductory level to exposure, the histogram, the levels and the curves, because that's a lot of people have trouble making sense out of it, and I understand that the interface and the controls can be a little bit confusing at times. So hopefully we'll go over it today, and hopefully you'll have it make all sense when we get done. Okay, so the old dreaded histogram, whether you're in Lightroom or Photoshop or Capture One, everybody's got a histogram. Even your camera's got a histogram on the back. And to a lot of people, this is a foreign language. And so I'm going to try to demystify that for you. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a floating window. I'm going to bring up a histogram here onto the picture, just so it can make sense and make things going. I'm also going to open up a levels, and I'm going to go ahead and put the levels right there, and I'm going to open up we'll do a curves and open that up, and this way we have those three separated. I don't want to mess with the rest of the program. I just want to concentrate on those three things. And the first thing you'll notice, okay, is the histogram. You have the left side all the way to the right side, and you go, well, what the heck is that telling me? It's actually very, very simple. What it's telling you is the light values of the photo. The left side is referred to as the darks or the shadows. The right side is referred to as the highlights or the whites. Okay? So when we're looking at a photo, you'll notice here as I hover over the picture, there's a line that's moving in the histogram. Okay, that's telling you where I'm pointing right now with the cursor is where that value in the histogram is. Okay, so if I go all the way to a highlight, you see I'm almost at the right side of the histogram. That's because we're closest to white on that particular thing. Okay, and white has a value of 255. Okay, black has a value of 0. If you remember those two values, you'll never go wrong. So white 255, black 0. Okay, and anything in the middle is your midtones, and that's all there is to a histogram. It's the amount of data and what the value is. So you can see here that our histogram is, leaning toward the right. And second thing I should say before we go any further, a lot of people have the misconception that you're supposed to have a histogram look a particular way. There's only one correct histogram. That's nothing could be truer than that. Okay, there is no such thing as a true, proper histogram diagram. Okay, every picture is unique. Every picture is going to have a different histogram. Okay, now it's just to help you avoid some things like highlight blowouts, right? Or losing everything to darkness. That's what you try to avoid. Now, if you look up here at the top, you'll see where I'm hovering right now. Okay, you'll see 255, 255, 255, 255. That's pure white. Okay? So wherever you hover and you see the numbers change, it's telling you 70 red, 165 green, 175 blue, and 138 is the brightness. Now, that's just handy for you to understand where you are with the colors, because everything in the game is RGB, right? Red, green, blue. Any combination of those can make any combination of any color. All right. So here we are. So what's on the left Shadows. What's on the right? Highlights. What's in the middle? Midtones. All right. Now levels. You'll notice that levels is exactly the same histogram as what we're looking at in the main histogram window. All right. So I'm resetting everything here to 0. And you can look and you go, okay, everything. I got 0 on the left. I got 255 on the right. And now it's exactly the same as this. Now, if I turned around and moved one of these levers, I would be changing the values and moving the histogram. Okay, so if I turn around and I move the histogram like this, you can see I'm pushing the histogram to the right. And I'm causing things to be clipped. Okay. If I take the right black point and I move it, you can see that I am darkening and crushing the blacks. All right. So it's not any more complicated than that. All right. That's what levels is. Okay. Now, if we turn on the auto levels, you can see it took very little adjustment. And if I hit the before and after, you can see it's such a slight change. So that means it was done right in camera in the first place. All right, so the curves is the last thing. Now you'll notice it's like a condensed version of the drawn out levels and histogram. It's still representing the same curve. They just condensed it a little bit in width, but it's still representing the same thing. Okay. Now if I take this top point and I drag it down, look at the curve in the histogram. Okay. So I'm pushing the histogram left. If I go this way, I'm pushing the histogram more to the right. All right. And this is, I can put points on this and I can put a curve in there and make more contrast and so forth. So this is for fine touches. So that's the basics of the histogram. Okay. Now we have several tools that affect the histogram. We start out with exposure. Okay. Now exposure I like to think of as the hatchet. Okay. It's a big crude tool that just wrecks everything that it touches. It's a big tool for imprecise work is what I refer to it. So if I move the exposure, now watch the histogram. The histogram gets thrown all the way to the right for increasing it. If I remove the exposure, the histogram gets moved to the left. Now, why? We moved it to lower the exposure by 4 stops here. So the histogram moved everything into the shadows. If we move everything to +4, okay, the histogram moves to the right and everything is blown out. Okay, and it's not very precise because the exposure slider is kind of like a heavy-handed hatchet, right? It's going to affect the entire image. It's going to affect the shadows, the midtones, the highlights, everything all in one swoop. So it's very inaccurate when you want to do precise work. Now, levels, on the other hand, is if you want to turn around and do a little bit less of a refinement, not so crude. You can come in and just make some subtle adjustments by bringing the points in. See, it's much more precise than the exposure slider. Okay, and it's easier to make more adjustments based on that. Okay, set that back. Now the curves, that's your scalpel. Okay, very precise, very capable, where you can do adjustments. You can come in and increase the term, and you can be very precise. You notice that the curve doesn't change much, the histogram on the slight little edges, but it makes precise changes. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up another image. All right, we'll move that over here, and you can see we're on a different image, and we're getting a total different histogram. Okay, much more balanced. I think that's because there's more colors and more things to balance in. If you look at it, we look very balanced and well exposed. Okay, so if we were to take exposure, what's going to happen if I increase the exposure? The histogram is going to move to the right. And there you go. The histogram moved to the right and everything's blown out. All right. If I go to the left, it's going to darken and underexpose and increase more and more darkness into the photo. Okay. So when that's too crude, we move to a more precise tool, which would be levels. All right. So levels, I can come in and do some adjustments. Very precise adjustments. I can even come in on the midtones and move them the way I see that the image is looking the best. And there you go, very precise at it. If I want to become very precise, I can come to the curve, okay? And the curve I can turn around and do a very precise, subtle, and increase the contrast. So that's mainly the difference. Let's do another one. Okay, here we've got one in white, different histogram again because there's different colors, different light values. And you'll notice here that in this particular image, we're really empty on the highlight side. So according to this, we don't have pure white in this photo. And look how it is on the levels histogram. Same thing. There's no information here on the right. So what do you think we should do to work with this image? Well, maybe we should turn around and move the histogram to the right until we're happy with the white balance and that. So let's try that. Let's move the whites in. And notice how we move by doing that. Look at the histogram. We're moving the histogram to the right. So we're getting the data to both. Okay? All right, so reset that. If I turn around and even use Capture One's auto control, it does the exact same thing on the analysis. It moved the midtones a little bit and it moved the highlights. And that's what a proper exposed photo is. All right, so let's do this with the curves. Okay. We'll do a couple points here. And if I bring up the highlights, bring down the shadows, right? And you can see I have pushed, but not as far. Okay. So if we do the before and after, see the histogram, watch the histogram line. See, we pushed it to the right by doing it with curves, but we did it in a very subtle, gradual way, okay? Not so heavy-handed. So, one more. Let's see. This one here. Okay? Look at the histogram. All the way to the left. There is information all the way across, but not very much. Okay? So, what do you think we should do to get a proper exposure on this? Well, let's see what the computer says. Not much. You see that? It just inched just a little bit on the thing. There wasn't much to be done. So they moved the white points in, move the gamma a little bit, and now we have a well-balanced photo. Now, one last thing is you'll notice that all of these things, the curves as well as the levels, have the ability to work with the individual channels. Okay? Now, the one thing about understanding colors and that and how they work is you're going to learn a little bit of color science. So let me open up and color editor. I'm going to go to the advanced. Okay? And I'm just going to put this here, and I want to just pick a color. Okay? So we can see the color wheel. Okay? Every color has an opposite color. Okay? We all know around Christmas time, for example, right? Christmas time, what colors are Christmas? Red and green. They go together. They're in everything in a holiday theme. Now watch. The color wheel, if we go to red, all right, which is about here, we go directly across, what do we wind up with? The opposite color of red is green. Okay? If we go to blue, okay, the opposite color of blue is yellow. Okay? So you get the idea. So you got to use this, and you got to learn this science about it, and that's the most technical thing you got to do. But you've got color wheels you can turn around and use as cheaters. You can look with your own eyes to see what happens. So let's go ahead and switch. I'm going to switch over to the curves, and I'm on the blues. Okay? So, now with that said, what's going to happen if I increase the blues to this image? We're going to get more blue. So let's see. See that? We're introducing more blues into the scene. Okay, now here's your question. What if I reduce the blues in the picture? Well, looking at the wheel, we're going to increase the yellows because we're reducing the blues, so we're going to wind up getting yellows. See that? Okay, and that's all there is to color science, okay? I'm lying there. There's a lot to color science, but that's the basics, okay? So just remember, if you're looking at a photo and you're going, I want to take a yellow out, I want to reduce some yellow in it, I want to increase some blues in it, this is how you do that, okay? And you can do the exact same thing in levels. Hit the blues, okay? And you can increase the blues how you want, or you could decrease them. Here's the yellows. There's the blues, right? I'm increasing there. Again, it's all the same theory, just in a different interface. All right? So curves is your most precise, and you could most versatile. You could do most things on curves. Your next is levels. It's a little less precise than curves, but you can get most jobs done. All right? So let's see here. Let me pick another picture. Okay, I'm going to do one in the dark here. All right. So here we look at the histogram on this, and we see kind of flat, not much data. Well, that's because this person was trying to do a deliberate silhouette. Okay. So there we have it. What do you think would be the proper thing here? Well, to me, I'm going, I need to increase the contrast. I need to have things a little darker because it's not really, look at the left. Over here on the left of the histogram, there's no real blacks. Well, that's a problem. Okay? We need real blacks. All right? So let me go ahead and introduce it with levels. Real blacks. So I'm going to bring it in. And look how nice that does that. All right? So if I do a before and the after, you can see I've introduced just by making that slight adjustment. All right? Now let's see what the computer would have done. We'll put it on auto. Well, they did the same thing. They moved in and made it a darker silhouette. They just went a little further than I did, but you get the idea. Okay? Simple adjustment. Okay. So that's your basics there. Okay? For crude, and you want to do massive adjustments across the whole board, you can use exposure. If you want a little more control, you can use levels. All right? If you want very precise, you want to use curves. Okay? And that's basically it. If you remember, the left side of the histogram is the blacks. The right side is the whites. And use the terms shadows, midtones, and highlights for interplaceable terms. So the left is your shadows, the middle is your midtones, and the right is your highlights. So that when you look at any photo, okay, any photo at all, you can determine we have lots of shadow data, we have very little highlight data, okay. Is this a wrong histogram? Not necessarily. How we want this picture to look is going to determine if we want this look, okay? It's always creativity. You just need to understand how these three panels work. They're tools for different precises. Let's see what Capture One says about this one. I just hit it on auto, and it says, hey, I didn't do hardly anything, did it? I'll undo it. It's so slight, you know, of course, because I got it right in camera. But that's all there is to it. Okay, so remember, shadows on the left, midtones in the middle, highlights on the right. And if you remember that data, you'll be able to work with your data and never have a problem. Okay, so hopefully this will help you. And until next week, you guys take care.